The Calgary Flames are taking Matthew Tkachuk to arbitration. What does this mean, and how is it different when a player files for arbitration? We'll discuss how this could unfold coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have some pretty substantial news here from the Calgary Flames organization. They have decided to take Matthew Tkachuk to team-elected salary arbitration. Now, in case you're not familiar with this, essentially when it comes to salary arbitration for restricted free agents, there is two types. The first window allows players to file for salary arbitration. Obviously, as their right, it gives them an opportunity to essentially take the team to arbitration to continue pleading their case in hopes to get a deal settled and obviously get closer to what they feel to be a fair deal. Now, of course, once you file for arbitration, you can still continue to negotiate while you're waiting for a hearing. Essentially, it's kind of almost like a court case in a sense. You're going to have an arbitrator, which is basically like a judge. They are going to hear the arguments of each side, and they will determine the outcome of the contract for you. It's just that simple. Now, in the case of Matthew Tkachuk, he is 1 year away from being an unrestricted free agent. So there is no doubt that if the arbitration gets decided through that way, it's going to be 100% be a 1 year deal, and he will then be unrestricted next year. And the Flames are going to be faced with the same thing they just dealt with here with Johnny Gaudreau. And we don't know if Matthew Tkachuk is going to sign long term or what his status is going to be. And I'm sure that's going to put Flames fans on edge even further after going through what they just went through here. So essentially, this has some pros and it has some cons. Now, here's the big thing. When you are in salary arbitration, you cannot accept your qualifying offer. So that qualifying offer that he would have been given, which was $9 million based on his previous contract and how the actual salary was paid in the final year, he cannot accept that anymore. Now, that would have been open to be accepted up until July 22nd. So he would have had basically to the end of this week if this would not have taken place, where he could have just said, yeah, you know what, I'm just going to accept the qualifying offer, 1 year deal, $9 million, and we're good. And then he becomes a UFA next year. You cannot even talk about an extension until January, and then they'd have essentially around 6 months to hammer out an extension or be faced with another deadline of like they just dealt with Johnny Gaudreau. Now, so once you file for either player or club elected salary arbitration, you cannot accept that anymore. So he cannot just do that. So essentially, this buys the Calgary Flames some time to be able to continue to negotiate with the hopes of signing him long term. So it is a good move from the team's perspective. Now, the other thing here is that it also prevents Matthew Tkachuk from being eligible to receive and sign an offer sheet. That's always a big concern, especially when you're talking about a player that you're not 100% sure wants to stay. Will he sign long term? There's already been some rumors out there about guys like Dubois, Tkachuk. Will they go the offer sheet route by not applying for player salary arbitration that he had the option to do up until yesterday at this time? You have to think that he kind of liked the idea of having that option open. That's one of the advantages of him not going to arbitration, is to keep the option available to sign his qualifying offer and offer sheets. They have now taken that away. So essentially, they will either negotiate a long-term deal with Calgary, or if it goes to arbitration, he's going to come out with a 1 year deal. But now arbitration cases are going to be heard from like July 27th, I think, until August the 10th or 12th or something like that. So there's going to be like a 2-week window starting at the end of July till the middle of August, where all these cases are going to have a hearing date. Now, they pushed them out like that for a couple of reasons, so that they have a window of time to continue to talk, continue to negotiate, with the hopes that they'll come to an agreement on their own. Because when teams and players end up in salary arbitration, as I mentioned before, a couple of years back, I did a study on the previous decade of salary arbitration cases and how that impacted the team and player relationship. And it was an astounding number. I think it was like almost 90% of players who went through salary arbitration with their team at that time, no longer played for that team within 24 months or less. A lot of them within 1 year, some of them within 2. It damages the relationship because, like I said, you have to go in there and you have to listen to them because that's their job, is to argue why they should pay you less money. Like, you're going to hear things that you don't want to hear. You're going to have to obviously talk yourself up. They're going to talk you down. It's not a pleasant scenario. I've heard some horror stories and seen players go through that before, and it never usually works out good on a long-term basis, at least in that particular relationship. Sometimes a player moves on, goes out somewhere else long-term, has a good career, doesn't mean anything like that, right? So ultimately, this really puts more of the leverage on Calgary's side. It takes away a couple of threats that they're certainly concerned about, and it allows them the hopes to sign long-term. Now, of course, we saw a couple of the bigger names like Pierre-Luc Dubois, Patrick Laine. This did not happen. The team did not go to salary arbitration. I don't think that the Jackets is too worried about Laine. I think they'll come to terms, but I guess the other thing here is that without having any kind of arbitration hearing, you don't know when it's going to get settled. So in the case of Pierre-Luc Dubois, he could still, up until the end of the week, decide he's just going to accept his qualifying offer and get a 1-year deal, which is technically not as big a deal for Winnipeg because he needs 2 more years to make it to be a UFA. So if he gets a 1-year deal, he's still under Winnipeg control. So even if he doesn't want to be there, they're not going to lose him for nothing. Secondly, obviously, he's still open to offer sheets, which is rumored. Would Montreal do that? I don't know. Right? That's the concern, though, if you're Winnipeg. And like I said, the other big thing, too, is that if there's no arbitration hearing coming, you don't know when it's going to get settled. It could drag on for days. It could be weeks. It could be months. You just don't know. We've seen some of these go right to the wire. Look at Willie Nylander. No arbitration there. That was different because he wasn't eligible. It went right to the point of almost not being eligible to play for the entire season. You've seen some other cases of players that Mitch Marner, Brady Tkachuk, they end up missing time because they're late signing. Happens a lot. So this is a good, smart move by Calgary to protect their interest in this case. Now, they can continue to negotiate, and if they get the vibe that there's just no way that Matthew's going to sign a long-term deal to be a Calgary Flame and be a big part of the future, then they may not have a choice but to consider a trade, which I'm sure that's not something that Flames fans want to hear right now. But at the end of the day, they can't let another star player walk out the door for nothing. This is a smart move by Brad Treliving to protect the interests of the organization and hopes it buys him some more time to convince Tkachuk to take a lucrative long-term deal. They really don't want to take this to salary arbitration because it's not a pretty sight because of the process, and you know the outcome is going to be a 1-year deal. But until the arbitrator actually comes back with an award and says your contract is this, you can negotiate. You can figure it out yourselves. And let's hope that they are able to do that and kind of go from there. Like if Pierre-Luc Dubois on his side of things, for example, it was Winnipeg's probably best interest not to do that because he would have the option to take a 1 or 2-year deal because he's not going right to UFA status. So he could then say, okay, I want a 2-year deal, $7 million or whatever he gets, let's say, and then he knows exactly when he's going to be a UFA. He's got a contract that's tradable, and then he can continue to force his way to where he wants to go. Whereas, Calgary's in a different spot here with Tkachuk. So let me know what your thoughts are on this scenario. Is this the right move by Brad Treliving and Flames organization? I think it is. But at the end of the day, if they can't get a long-term deal hammered out, it's still not the ideal situation. So we'll have to see, but it buys them some time to get it done. What do you think the contract would be? Can they get it done? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.